Good afternoon. How's everybody today? I appreciate the invitation to come and visit with you folks. Again, there's going to be some fundamental changes in how antibacterial drugs are used in livestock. So what I want to do is take a little time to go over the history of how we got to where we're at right now. Then I want to spend a sufficient amount of time talking about the new regulation and how that's going to affect beef producers, poultry producers, swine producers. Talk about some labeling changes that you're going to see, and then when is all this going to happen? So some real distinct timelines on when this is going to happen. So this is not a new activity. This is an overall timeline of what's happening with the government. In 2010, CVM issued their treatise on prudent judicious use of antibacterial drugs. That's CVM Guidance 209. That begot the rest of the guidances. Guidance 213, which is the roadmap for removal of the growth claims, then draft regulation, then final regulation for the new VFD in 2015. And again, this is all going to be implemented. It's going to happen on the 1st of January 2017. So again, we're about a year away from this happening. So what I want to do is break these down into individual components and provide you some explanation on what happens. CVM Guidance 209 was their thesis on the good use of antibacterial drugs in livestock. And basically what they said was the use of these antibacterial drugs for the treatment, control, and prevention of disease was judicious use. But in the second sentence they said that use of these drugs for growth and promotion was not. And then the third part, or the third pillar of their activity, was that a veterinarian needed to be involved in decisions for the use of antibacterial drugs on all livestock operations. So this put the stick in the sand. This is what the agency believed needed to happen. As soon as they finalized this guidance in April of 2012, again, we had to understand what the definitions of those different uses are. So again, these are FDA definitions for treatment, control, and prevention. So treatment is you've got sick animals. They have disease. They have BRD. They have foot rot. You have disease control, where you've got a group of cattle in a lot. You've got several of them sick, but you know everybody in the lot is probably incubating that disease. So you need to do something for that group. Prevention is I know something's going to happen. I have medical history that if I leave cattle out, and let's say certain areas in Missouri that are have anaplasmosis every year. If I do not put tetracycline in front of those livestock or those calves, we are going to have clinical anaplasmosis. So again, that's prevention. Growth and promotion, giving drugs to make them gain or making them more efficient in their gain. So again, CVM said that that use of these medically important drugs was not judicious. So what is a medically important drug, and why is this important to FDA or the Center for Veterinary Medicine? This is a list of medically important antibacterial drugs. They start at the top with the critically important antibacterial drugs, such as third-generation cephalosporins, the fluoroquinolones. Then they go down to the highly important drugs, the important. And for the cattle industry, actually, the bottom category of not medically important is a big deal in the fact that your ionophores, your coccidiostats are down there, and they will not be governed if fed individually under this pending regulation. Okay, why are these drugs important? This has nothing to do with veterinary medicine. Absolutely nothing to do with veterinary medicine. Their importance is driven by their importance for use in humans for treating disease. The worry that has been promulgated from the agency is that use of these drugs in livestock is affecting their use in people. That's the whole premise behind these medically important drugs. Okay? So when they issued Guidance 209, put their stick in the sand, they said, okay, now what we are going to do is we're going to work cooperatively with the pharmaceutical industry to remove these claims. They had another way to do it, which is called a notice of opportunity hearing, where you bring basically money and lawyers and you argue it out in court. Well, nobody wins in that situation. So the center came to the pharmaceutical industry with this draft guidance and asked if we would participate. And the entire industry agreed to participate in it. It gave us basically a 3-year timeline beginning in December of 2013 when they finalized this guidance to eliminate the growth claims from medically important products. There are 240 plus products involved. As Zoetis, we have 96 of those, and we are currently in the process of submitting labels to remove those claims. I have almost 3,000 labels I have to get finalized with the agency and submitted by next June. So again, this is the roadmap for getting it done. The next thing that happened, and again, is that they had to kind of, why are we doing this? So again, their ultimate goal is to promote the judicious use of antibacterial drugs in food animals, okay? They wanted to make all of these products under veterinary supervision. So again, the medicated feed additives would go to a Veterinary Feed Directive, and because you can't have a water-soluble product approved orally in a feed as a prescription, all of the medically important water-soluble products will move to prescription or RX, similar to what your, let's say, your bottle of Naxel or your bottle of Draxxin is. So you have to have a veterinary script to obtain those. And in truth, they want all of this under the oversight of a veterinarian. That's what their goal is. That's what they want to come away from this at the end of 2016. Now, to get this done and not drive everybody crazy with paperwork, they had to upgrade the regulations that garner VFDs. This regulation is already in place. Went in place in 2000, but the current regulation is basically unworkable. It would be one VFD for one use. And so the number and the process for doing this is old, and it would not meet current production practices. CVM issued draft regulation at the same time that they issued Guidance 213. That has been out for comment, it's been back, and in June of this year, they finalized the VFD regulation. Okay, so let's talk about what is it. Again, as I mentioned, this isn't new. There are currently products available on the market that are under VFD, the best example being Pulmotil. Okay, this is like a veterinary script, except in this case it prescribes the use of an antibacterial drug for a group of animals for a certain disease condition. Okay, now the revised guidance changes that just a little bit and makes, and what I guess the best word is modernizes the VFD. Now, if you would like to read the new regulation, there's the link. I can tell you for a fact, if you're having trouble sleeping, this is a really, really good thing to put by your bedside, okay? But if you want to understand the regulation much better, there's a link here to CVM Guidance 120, which really is a very good document issued by the government that goes through the different aspects of the VFD and has a very extensive question and answer section into it. And they've answered a lot of questions. And actually, this is a very good document, and I would suggest, if you get a chance, to please read that. So what are some of the new provisions of this thing? First of all, it's going to allow the application of a VFD for a period of time of up to 6 months, which again allows some flexibility within your production systems. Hopefully, and we're working on this as an industry, you'll be able to issue, or a veterinarian will be able to issue a VFD with one of these things, or an iPad or a computer. Now, it's not to say he couldn't issue it on a piece of paper, but again, it's going to allow electronic issuance, which is, I think, going to make this easier because all of the information can be embedded in drop-downs on those. One of the things that both the veterinarian, who's ever selling the feed, and whoever is using the feed in livestock has to be aware of is when a VFD is issued, all three of those people are going to have to maintain those records of that VFD for 2 years. Because whether we like it or not, the FDA is going to come out and check to make sure that these things are being done correctly. And I'll tell you in a little bit how he's going to get that done. Again, the responsibility for the veterinarian, we'll go over that in a little bit, the distributor who's selling the feed. And again, what exactly has to be in the VFD is in this regulation. Now, the underlying part of this slide is absolutely important, and you folks must understand this, is that it will be illegal to use a medicated feed for an indication that's not on the label. Examples: aureomycin. If you've got calves, let's say, with some foot rot, or you have calves in the field with pink eye and you put some aureomycin crumbles out there, those will both be illegal uses of the compound because you cannot use those in an extra label manner. Okay, and the veterinarian cannot prescribe that for you because he will be in violation of the act as well. I'm warning you of this right now because the agency will be out checking for this. And their investigators are very good in figuring out that maybe it's not being used as written on the script. So again, that's a warning I will provide. I've been through about 25 FDA inspections and these folks do not miss much. Okay? So what products are going to be impacted? So again, the medically important antibacterial drugs. Examples for the cattle industry would be aureomycin, tylosin, okay, will fall under veterinary script. Okay? The water-soluble products. Now again, tetracycline soluble powder, lincomycin soluble powder will become RX products. Now the good part about that is that when they become RX, they are now open for extra label use by the veterinarian. So water-soluble products now will be able to be used in an extra label manner, meeting the requirements of extra label use. Now the coccidiostats, ionophores, and bacitracins are not involved with this, but if they are in combination with a medically important antibiotic, so again, a rumensin-tylan combination or an aureomycin combination, those will fall under veterinary script or a veterinary VFD. So again, extra label use is going to be prohibited. And again, growth promotion is going away. This is going to happen on the 1st of January 2017. Now, what are the requirements? Okay. The veterinarian is going to be in charge of writing these scripts. First of all, the veterinarian writing the script needs to be licensed in the state where the animals reside. Okay, so I still hold a veterinary license in the state of Iowa, and so I could write a VFD for my brother-in-law up north of Monticello because I am licensed in that state, and I also have what they call a VCPR, or a veterinary client-patient relationship, and there are very specific rules on what that means, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, what will be on a VFD is listed right there. So when a veterinarian writes that VFD, his name, phone number, and address is going to be the first one, followed by you as the producer, and then the distributor who will get this thing will have a record of it as well. There's going to be an issuance date, and then an expiration date 6 months later. These will have 6-month period of time. He is going to have to precisely put down who needs to get that script. So if I've got feeder cattle, okay, that's fine. Where are they located? What's the address? Where are these animals found? What indication are you using it for? And again, it better be on the bag. So in the case of aureomycin, it needs to be on there for the treatment of respiratory disease caused by Pasteurella multocida. Okay. The withdrawal period, reorders if they are allowed on the product label or the veterinarian deems that those are going to be needed. There's going to be an extra label statement on there. And then, can he use it in combination with other drugs? Yes or no? And most of the time he's going to hopefully he will check yes. And then his signature. So again, this is a signed document that will have to go into the distributor or the feed mill, as well as you as the producer are going to get a copy of it. So again, this is the information that's going to be required in order to get these products. Okay? This is what a mock-up form looks like, and currently Zoetis and many of the other sponsors are working with the agency right now to get this thing hammered down and finalized so that it looks the same from everybody. So Zoetis doesn't have one form and Elanco has another one and Mariel has a third, and so that they're all confusing. We're trying to get a standardized form so it looks the same across the industry. And again, we are also looking at multiple vendors for the electronic form and trying to set up a standard to make that happen. So again, that is in process and it will be well done, and we will have education programs out for you folks beginning probably the middle of next year to get ready for the implementation of this in 2017. I cannot stress the importance of record retention. You have to maintain these records for 2 years, because what's going to happen is that beginning in 2017, and probably not right away, but I'm guessing about the beginning of second quarter, as part of the routine feed mill inspections that FDA does, they're going to have their investigators take a half a dozen or a dozen VFDs and go out and make sure that there are records there and they're being properly taken care of. So they're going to go into the feed mill, they're going to give them their FDA badge and the notice of inspection, and they'll say, I need 6 VFDs. So then he's going to take those 6 VFDs, he's going to go visit the producer, and he's going to go visit the veterinarian to see if they both have records, the same records on place, and also is the producer using the product as prescribed, and are those cattle really there? Very important. Now, you can store those records electronically, but when you do that, you must meet the requirements of this area of the Code of Federal Regulation, or 21 CFR Part 11. And there are some very hefty security requirements in that part of the regulation. My suggestion to most producers is when you get a VFD, at the bottom of it, sign it, date it, put it in a file cabinet. Because over the years, what I have seen is paper is golden. If I have a signed piece of paper in the file that said, here it is, can't be disputed. But if I have an unsecure computer location where a document could be changed, they don't know if it's been changed or what. So again, that's going to lead a question in their mind. So again, my suggestion initially is paper. Another methodology is to take that piece of paper, scan it as an unchangeable PDF, and then store it electronically. That's another way you could consider doing it. But again, records, they will be out checking. I can guarantee it, because their reputation is on the line, and truthfully, CVM has basically said that you guys are going to be compliant, and somewhat their reputation is on the line. So they're going to be out checking to make sure that folks are following this new regulation. Takeaways on this. Again, I want to repeat, no extra label use. Now, historically, where that comes from is when the original VFDs were brought forth in 2000, AFIA, which is the feed manufacturers, asked for this part of the regulation. And they got what they asked for. Now, it seems really ludicrous to me that as a veterinarian, I can prescribe an injectable antibiotic like tetracycline LE200 in an extra label manner. I can prescribe tetracycline in the water in an extra label manner, and yet I cannot prescribe oxytetracycline or cortetracycline in an extra label manner. But the regulation is what the regulation is. In order to change that, we need to have a change in the law. Okay, so again, if you guys want to go out and rally Congress, here'd be a good thing to think about it. Okay, I'll leave that out as a suggestion. Again, maintenance of records. Can't stress that enough. Okay, and then this veterinary client-patient relationship. Okay, and I'll get to that in the next slide, but again, there is specific regulation that defines this, and I'll talk about that in the next slide, but you're going to have to get and meet with your veterinarian on a very routine basis if you're going to use medicated feeds over the next little bit of period of time. So what's going to end up happening is that caution statement on the bottom line there will be on all the products that will be purchased here in the future. Okay? Now, the veterinary client-patient relationship, okay, again, the veterinarian must be licensed in the state where the animals are at. Okay? And the veterinarian must practice in accordance to state regulation. Now, I do know that the Iowa regulation, or the Iowa Practice Act, meets the current federal definition of VCPR. So if a veterinarian is licensed in the state of Iowa and he's following the Practice Act, he understands this. But the basic premise is, number one, the veterinarian has taken responsibility for the animals on that institution. Number two, he has a good working knowledge of the animals on that. Now, that can be garnered by routine visits emergency visits, but he understands how that operation is running. And then the third premise is he is available via consult if things are not working. Okay? So again, those are the three basic precepts. Again, 21 CFR 530 is the regulation that garners this. I spoke with the veterinary school. I lectured at the vet school last week to the junior class. And one of their work assignments for their final is to read this regulation, because the questions on their final from me are going to come directly from that regulation. They need to understand this to practice. Okay? And if you want to see a state-by-state list, again, FDA has gone the extra route of publishing that list in which states meet that regulation and which ones do not. So again, the veterinarian is going to be the key person in this thing, and so my suggestion is that you folks need to visit with your veterinarian in the coming year. Another thing that you are going to see happen, probably within the next 2 to 3 months, is you're going to start to see this labeling on bags of medicated feed if it arrives at your institution. Because the one thing the agency did not anticipate was production timelines for medicated feeds. They thought as an industry we could change over overnight to new labeling. Zoetis went in, put our production line up for making of lincomycin. So when we order lincomycin, by the time we get it in a distribution center from beginning of manufacture to in bags is 8 months. The other thing of it is that all of the companies that buy medicated feeds, there are only 4 bag manufacturers in the United States. All of us have to change that over. So that means all of the pharmaceutical companies, Purina, Cargill, and all of the feed groups have to make over, and I think we would have buried the bag manufacturers. So in order to make this happen in a more logical time frame, they've allowed us to add this to our labels without any pre-review, basically saying that as of January 1, 2017, this is what's happening, so that we can begin manufacturing a normal process. And again, beginning in early 2017, you'll start to see final labeled product out into the market. Final labeling is going to look like this. This is what's going to be on there. So again, federal law restricts medicated feed, it's not a fee, it's feed, containing this Veterinary Feed Directive drug to be used on or by the order of a licensed veterinarian. Okay, and then again, there's going to be the extra label statement. So again, raising everything up a notch as far as your use of these products. Now, when's all this going to happen? As I mentioned, you're going to see transition labeling in early 2016. As Zoetis, I have to have all of my proposed final labels to the government by June, the end of June 2016, because by law they have 180 days to review it. We have already begun to submit proposed labeling to them, and we are meeting with them in about 6 weeks to review the proposed labeling to make sure it meets their needs. But again, we've got a lot of label to submit to them. What will happen in a 3-day period in December, the 8th, 9th, and the 10th, the agency will approve all the labeling changes for all of the products, for all of the manufacturers in that 3-day period. So on the 8th, you're going to have the pioneer drugs are going to be approved. On the 9th, the combinations will be approved. And on the 10th, the generics are approved. And on the 11th, I suppose FDA is going out for beer. Because it's truthfully, this is a tremendous amount of work. The implementation, we thought that they would kind of phase this in somewhat slowly. And shall we say, we were abruptly informed that on the 1st of January 2017, they expect full implementation of this. So, we've got some time, but it's going to go away real quick. So, here are some of the suggestions I'm going to make to the group. Number one, January 1 is coming. About 1 year away, a little bit over. My suggestion as a producer is you need to sit with your nutritionist and your veterinarian at the same table, and you need to understand every place where they're using a medicated feed. Because right now the nutritionist is probably dictating most of that use versus the veterinarian. You need to understand why you're using those products. Determine, is it on label, is it off label, is it a growth promotion, is it a therapeutic? Why are you using it? Okay? And I think you need to look at what livestock it's being used in. So is it in calves out in the field? Is it in feedlot? Is it in cows? Where's it being used? I think you need to create that list. You need to put together a straw man of what VFDs you may need. And even to the point, I would suggest that you review your entire program. What are you using for injectables? What are you using for water solubles? Get them listed, get it figured out. Because in truth, someday you could have the FDA knocking at your door and they've got a feed directive in their hand. But also remember that if they have enough suspicion, they can dig deeper, that you may not be using your injectables correctly. Okay? They're very good. I'll give you a story. Had a dairyman get inspected by FDA as a result of a residue in a cull cow. Came in, started looking at his records, and the guy was a pretty good producer. They said, okay, we would like to see your purchase history on XNL RTU. So he gave him the invoices. They went to his drug cabinet and they counted the number of vials that were there. And then they said, okay, so how many animals have you treated with this product in the last month since you ordered this and with what's in your inventory currently? He said, went back, got his records out, figured out it was like 31 cows. They did the math. Oh, and then they asked him, what's the average weight of your cow that you're treating? So they did the math, looked at the inventory, looked what was left, and wrote him up for extra label use of that product because his inventory didn't match up. He had less bottles on the shelf than would have been justified by how he supposedly treated those animals. And so they said, well, you must be using this in an extra label manner. As I say, these guys are sharp and they are a little sneaky. The next thing I'll recommend is, if FDA does come to your place, answer only the question they're asking. Do not volunteer any information, because then you've opened up the door for a follow-on question. The other thing I'm going to have you suggest is if you have a larger operation, create a VFD lead on there. Somebody that knows the regulations, somebody that knows the question and answers, somebody that knows what's going on, where the records are kept. Because again, that person could be invaluable in a future inspection. I would also suggest that you consider, a lot of the dairy industry now has treatment protocols for different diseases. Maybe a good time to set up a treatment protocol for different diseases on your operations. BRD, foot rot, whatever. And then the third thing is buy a scale. Buy a scale. I had a dairyman have a residue violation and he could not understand why it had happened. Spent a fair amount of time on the phone. I says, okay, so this cow had metritis and you were treating her with XNL. How big was she? Oh, I don't know. So I said, well, how much XNL were you giving her? 35 cc's. Did the math in my head. Had 2 mLs per 100 pounds. I said, well, that cow weighed 1,800 pounds? Well, no, but that's what we give every cow. Really? I said, you've got a big group of Holsteins there. 500 pounds more drug than what that cow weighed. That's where you make these mistakes. So again, a scale or a weight tape or something, because it does make a difference on residues when you do that. So again, those are a couple suggestions that I'm going to make. There's time to do this, okay? There's time to get it done. And I know I've got the Zoetis guys are sitting back there at the second to last table. We are going to educate them to within an inch of their lives on VFD, okay? So that they know what's going on and they can provide good counsel to you folks on making this happen and making it happen good. Because I think it's an opportunity for the entire livestock industry to show that we're doing the right thing. That we're doing this correctly. We can follow the directions. We're using these products safely and effectively in order to produce healthy livestock. And again, that's, I think, the goal of everybody here is to produce healthy livestock. So again, Zoetis is working with a lot of partners on this thing. And again, that's just a list of some of them. I mean, we have met with every one of these institutions both formally and informally. We're trying to make sure that we're having a consistent education message go across. We're trying to make sure that the forms are working right. We're working with the different veterinary groups so that they are well educated and can take care of this in January of 2017. I'm going to open this up for questions, but if you folks have questions when you leave here, there's my contact information. My email, my cell phone, and my office number. As the guys from Zoetis know, they can call me and I will call them back usually pretty quick. If you think of something or you need something, please give us a call. We would like to help you through this thing because again I think we can make this happen. I think we can make it happen very effectively without a lot of, shall we say, disruption. Now, is it going to change things? Absolutely. But I think the industry is up for this challenge. So with that, I'm going to quit and open this up for questions. And said differently, let's say I have drugs on hand and my VFD is expired. So let's say I have some aureomycin on farm to treat calves and my VFD expires. I have to get a new one before I can put that back in the feed. You have to have a valid VFD that's not expired in order to use these products. So that's one thing you're going to have to mark on your calendar or have a routine enough visit with your veterinarian to make sure that they're up to date. 2 years, just 2. The original proposal in the original regulation was 1, but because veterinarians have to maintain their RX records for 2 years, they wanted to be consistent across both, and so they went with 2 years. Everybody. So again, it's the veterinarian, the person selling the feed to the farm, and the producer. Those 3 people have to maintain records for 2 years. Most likely, at least my estimation is stores like Tyson's, Tractor Supply are probably going to move away from selling these products because in order to do that, they are not going to have the record-keeping capability at that institution to do it. So I think you're going to see that go away. Now the feed mills, and especially the category or the licensed feed mills, are already keeping FDA records. That's not going to be a problem. The small feed stores that are selling a lot of bagged feed, those are the ones that are going to have to be upgraded to get their records handled correctly. But at least my personal opinion is that the big farm and fleet stores don't want to take that liability on. They're going to walk away from it. And I doubt they're going to put a veterinarian on staff to write the scripts.
The reason they didn't react on the feed type antibiotics differently than the others is what?
So historically, if you go back, in the late 1970s, the Food and Drug Administration issued a notice of opportunity hearing to the industry and all of those companies that sold penicillin and tetracycline, that they didn't feel that the use of those products in a growth manner was warranted scientifically. Congress got involved and multiple things got involved, and those notice of opportunity hearings never happened. The FDA finally closed those out a couple years ago and got sued by several of the major supporters of animal agriculture, the National Resources Defense Council, and some of those, and took them to court. And basically, the judge upheld the withdrawal of the NOH. The agency thought the best way to do this was cooperatively. Again, they could have done it the hard way if they chose, but they don't have the budget, and they didn't want to get into the cat fight on doing it. The scientific support is a phobia of antibacterial drugs causing resistance in people. That's the phobia that you're dealing with. And that's being, raising antibiotic-free this or... Stroh and I had a long conversation about this out in the hall. Don't get me started on antibiotic-free. Other questions?
So you said a coccidia stat did fall under this government?
Only if it is fed in combination with a medically important antibacterial drug. So if you're using decox alone, business as usual. If you're using Rumensin or Bovatec alone for coccidia, it's business as usual. But if I put any of those drugs with a medically important antibacterial, so again, chlortetracycline, tylosin, then they're under VFD script. And I thank you all for your time. And again, I'll be around a little bit if you have some more questions like to visit. Happy to thank you for the invitation. And my wife is extremely happy to come back to Ames for a period of time as we both graduated from up in Ames. So it's fun to be back. Thank you.